guys, it's Jen. This is another episode of Reframing Me, and I'm your host, Dr. Jennifer Brubaker. I wasn't planning to re-release this episode today, but it actually feels quite appropriate for where I am. It's the autumn equinox, so the day when light and dark are in balance, and balance has been on my mind a lot lately. I had an entirely different episode planned. So, not just planned, like literally recorded. But when I went back and listened to it, I hated it. I feel like I sounded rambling and whiny and totally just without purpose or direction. And I can say, without a doubt, in 220 episodes, I've never thought that before. I mean, y'all might feel differently. You might be like, girl, that's just kind of how you always sound. But I can tell you, I heard it that way today. So, anyway, it's been a rough week. It's been a hard one. Our world and our nation, total mess. And unfortunately, that mess has found its way to our sweet little campus. The issues stemmed from a spirit rock and two very differing viewpoints, and an overall lack of empathy and tolerance and compassion and critical thinking skills. So, just kind of how it feels the norm is these days. Anyway, our sweet campus became a dystopian hellscape for a few hours as police were everywhere. Helicopters were circling, sirens were blaring as there were reports of multiple gunmen around campus. Thankfully, my son and his girlfriend, they were at the student union when they got a very early message, saw some scary activity, and took off before the lockdown happened. He was parked nearby, so they were able to get to his car and come straight here. Thank God. I am so grateful for that, at least. But his poor roommate was at a 7 p.m. physics exam, of all things. I mean, I can't imagine personally anything worse to be trapped at. So he was at this exam. So he was trapped in the dark for a few hours in a building with his class, just scared and watching Shrek on his phone, which just seems like such a contrast to what was going on. And our international boys, thankfully, they were in their dorm, but we had like a zillion calls back and forth to check on them and try to explain to them what was going on and what to do and what not to do and to stay put. But we all had nothing to go on except social media and texting. And we still don't have an exact idea of what actually happened. But after 3 hours, it was over. We got the all clear that it was a false alarm, and it was it. Like, hey, it's over. And I know we just talked about mental health and the state of the world, and I feel like we even talked about trauma. I don't remember, but I don't want to turn into Debbie Doom and Gloom over here. And that's exactly how I feel right now. So I hate the episode that I recorded. I'm feeling super imposter syndrome over here for some reason too. If you want to know the truth, I have some academic articles out for review, and I know that those take literally forever, like months and months and months. But of course, I feel like because I've gotten a couple of rejections, but I mean, realistically, they were from outlets that weren't a good fit, but still they were rejections. But now they're at better fits. But I still can't help but feel like everybody hates what I do. Everybody hates me. You know that feeling. So, yeah, I've been feeling off lately. Like I am in one of those stretches where the sun is kind of behind the clouds more than I want it to be. And between rejections and projects that don't land sometimes the way that I had hoped, and the external world, I just am feeling kind of a mess, kind of stuck. And I know all of this is just part of life and part of the process, but it doesn't make it any easier. At the same time, life at home is shifting too. My daughter is counting down the days until she turns 16 and gets her driver's license, literally reminding me every time we are in the car, every chance she gets. She is excited for her freedom and her independence, and she's just so excited. She is my youngest and my only daughter, and I'm feeling this a lot heavier than I did when it was the boys. Like every time she brings up her independence, I obviously feel happy for her because she's so excited. But I also can't help but think what that independence means for me. Because once she doesn't need me, is she going to still want me? And I realize how pathetic that sounds. And when she says it, I know it's not a freedom for me, but it kind of is, right? And, for me, it's like years of being the driver, right? Being the chauffeur for everyone, listening to everyone in the car, hearing their stories, having them run out to me excited to tell me something that had happened. I mean, we're talking like nearly 20 years of having one, two, three to drive around, and then three, two, one, right? And now we're going to be down to zero. And I know that these drives have just been so much more than transportation, right? They've been like our time, 20 minutes or so to talk about our day, to hear something that might be hard, or to even just sit in the silence with the music playing. These drives have been such a part of the relationships that we have all built, where stories were told that wouldn't have come up elsewhere, or where questions or comments came out because they didn't have to look me in the eye when they said it, or where we laughed, or sometimes cried, or yelled, or just kind of talked and sat there in peace. And soon that's all going to be gone. And that's why this question keeps coming up for me. Like, if she doesn't need me, will she still want me? But that's the shift that we all face as parents of teenagers, moving from being the parent who they need to the parent who they hopefully choose. And that's hard. It's vulnerable because it means letting go of control. It means risking that they won't choose us sometimes. It means trusting that the foundation that we have built will be enough for them to come back, not because they have to, but because they want to. And then today, I spent the day with my dad. My mom had mahjong at her house, so she asked if he could come over to my house. And we did some small things together, but he's my dad. He's the man who took care of everything. Successful and steady and productive and in charge of everyone and everything. And now he needs me to be in charge of everyone and everything. And that is hard. That shift is hard to watch, and it is really hard to be part of. And then later, my daughter came home and she drove us to go get ice cream. And I was in the back seat. Of course, she was at the wheel, gaining her freedom one day closer at a time. And my dad was in the passenger seat. He can't drive anymore. And I felt very sandwiched between them, feeling that kind of weight of what it means to now move through life in these in between roles. And as heavy as it felt, though, it did also kind of feel like balance, like one generation letting go and another one stepping forward, I guess. Sadness and gratitude all mixed together, being able to hold both at once. And that's where my mind keeps circling back to the shift from being needed to being wanted, because parenting, it starts with this absolute and total need. And for so long, my whole purpose has been tied to meeting those needs. And now my role is changing. And I don't ever want to guilt my daughter or my boys into staying with me or being with me or choosing me anytime that they don't want to. And I don't want my purpose to just kind of disappear because they don't need me anymore. I want to make sure that I always find ways to matter, even when no one is asking because they don't need it. So the equinox, it doesn't erase the shadows and it doesn't chase away the light. It manages to hold both. And maybe that's for us too, to let ourselves hold both sadness and gratitude, hold both endings and beginnings, wants and needs, trying to balance it without trying to make it all one thing. So I thought, since today, the day that I'm recording this, is the autumn equinox, I thought it would be appropriate to reshare this episode today because I, for one, need the reminder, and maybe some of y'all do too. Letting go isn't the end, it's the start of something new. We kind of have started a tradition on the show of reflecting on the change of seasons. I mean, it only makes sense that we should use the turning points of nature as an opportunity to really look at how it impacts us. We are all a part of nature. We are all connected to this earth and to the universe. And like all other living, growing things on earth, we can't pretend that we aren't also affected by the energy forces and the pivotal moments in nature. Animals shed their coats, or they store fat, or they gather food, or they sleep more, or whatever other changes that they organically make based on the season. Plants and flowers and trees, they all run through cycles based on the season. We don't expect plants or other animals to live or look or behave or probably even feel the same at all points of the year. It's really kind of ridiculous that when we look at humans, we think differently. Of course, we're also going to live or look or behave or feel differently when the seasons change. The temperature changes, the sunlight changes, energy forces change. Yes, I know I am woo woo Jen Jen, but even the scholar, the social scientist in me, cannot understand why anyone would be able to deny that as a part of nature and the earth and the universe, of course, we are going to be impacted by these pivotal points in nature too. The earth's energy changes, and so does ours. So let's embrace those changes rather than fight them. This upcoming weekend is the autumnal equinox. So I thought we could do a special little series here in honor of this change. It really is the perfect time for us to take a beat and look inward to see where we are or who we are, appreciate where or who we have been, and set goals for where we are going and who we are becoming. Now, initially, I thought this was a Jenna Zen episode, and it kind of is, but it's so much more than that, right? Let's take a step backwards here to the root of everything that we do here, everything we talk about, everything we study. I know that's a big statement, right? But one of the earliest family communication concepts that we ever talked about here was systems theory and our family as a social system. You may remember that system theory provides a framework for us to understand the complex dynamics that happen within a family unit. By viewing families as systems, we can look at all of the interconnectedness of the family members and the influence of their communication on the relationships. So today, as we approach this autumnal equinox, we're going to start this three-part conversation / reflection with our family as a system and why that would even be relevant here. Well, systems theory says that each family member is interdependent and functions as a part of the larger whole family system. But each family member is also interconnected and interdependent, which means that any change in one person can impact the entire family unit. You may also remember that in another earlier episode, we talked about ecosystems because systems theory also recognizes that families exist within larger sociocultural contexts, whether it's your extended family, friends, neighborhood, region, religion, school, work, sports teams, like literally any larger system that your family belongs to can influence the dynamics and the interactions of the family itself. So, why is this even relevant here? Well, as the season changes, each of us changes. Each of our energy is impacted. So, we may feel, behave, and communicate differently. And just like each plant out there is impacted slightly differently during the change. I mean, when you look outside, the leaves on the same tree, they can each turn different colors at different times, right? Different flowers bloom longer than others. Now, I have not done any research on this, but I am going to guess that some squirrels, they gather their acorns early. They're extra prepared. And some are probably procrastinator squirrels. Maybe they're just not willing to let go of summer just yet. And there'll be acorns left, right? And I don't think that every bear gains the same quantity of fat prior to hibernation, right? Again, literally zero research to back either of those statements up, but I think they're pretty logical, don't you? So, this change of season, this change in nature, this change in energy forces, it's going to impact us each in our own way. So, as we interact within our family system and as we communicate with our interconnected people, we need to keep in mind that we're all in this point of transition. And this transitional time is the best time for us to each take a look inside. And you can certainly do this on your own if you prefer. Use it to journal about or meditate on. But I know that I'm personally going to make my family do it too, because I really think that we all get so caught up in life that we never really stop to reflect. And I am obviously a huge believer in getting us all to cultivate gratitude and recognize all of the things that we have to be grateful for. Historically, the autumn equinox is the time of the final harvest. Back when families were much more connected to the earth and to nature than we are now, like growing their own food and stuff. This was the time of year that they would be grateful and celebrate the summer's abundance. So today, I'd love you to take a few minutes to reflect on your own summer abundance. What quote unquote harvests did you receive this past season? No, we may not tend to crops anymore. But I know that there are things in your life and in your relationships and in yourself that you have been tending to and nurturing over the past several months. Can you have gratitude for all of that growth? Remember, we are only one part of our family system. And to best understand our family as a whole, we need to look at the sum of all of the different parts. How have you each grown and changed over the last season? Has any of this change impacted your interconnectedness or your communication? Chances are it has. The only constant is change, right? So now is a good time, not only a good time to be grateful for all the abundance we've seen, but it's also a good time to see how we need to adapt. Time to see who each of us are and how this family system needs to adapt, how we need to do this as we enter this new season. Because we have all grown and changed over these months, and so have our families, right? Because each individual person has experienced their own growth, which cannot not impact the family unit as a whole, right? Well, the equinoxes, spring and autumn, are the only 2 days throughout the year when the earth is in perfect balance. The dividing line between day and night perfectly connects the North and the South poles. Day and night are equal all over the planet. Balance. Something we all strive for in our lives and in our families and in our relationships. Something that I don't know about you, but I feel like I am always falling just a bit short. Who am I kidding, right? I am always falling a bit short on this. Whether it's trying to balance my roles as mother and wife and daughter, or even my roles of mother to Tobias, mother to Cain, and mother to Ever, because even that can be a total balancing act. I mean, professionally, I struggle with balancing my roles as a podcaster and a professor. I'm balancing my emotions. Oh, Lord, am I balancing my emotions? Happiness that I have this wonderful family here with me right now under one roof, getting along and thriving. But also the sadness that I know how finite our time like this is as I watch the days and weeks and months ticking by. The excitement of watching my children growing up and the dread at watching them growing up. Hope for my own new chapters and the fear for what that all means. And often, I am even balancing multiple of these emotions simultaneously: excitement and sadness and hope and fear and happiness and worry and pride and all of it. I'm balancing my kids' needs and my husband's needs and my parents' needs and my friends' needs and my students' needs and my listeners' needs and my needs. I'm even often balancing my physical needs and my emotional needs and my spiritual needs. We're balancing our time and our roles and our finances and our emotions. And we have long given up balancing our hormones. In our families, we may be balancing our roles as the nurturer and the disciplinarian, or balancing how much independence we give our kids and how much control we try to maintain. And for those of us with multiple kids, we're trying to maintain the balance of each of these for each of them. So, yeah, it's safe to say that balance is something that we seek in our lives. Let's take a minute to go back to a family communication concept that we covered way back in an early episode: the roles that we hold in our families. A role describes a set of behaviors that a family member performs and that are expected from that person, from the other family members. And all of this in relation to all of the other people in the family and all of the other people's behaviors that they perform. But it's the family as a system that sustains the role over time. And it's not like, oh, you were born as the cheerleader or you were born as the leader. Your role may be influenced by your predispositions, but the role we play in our families then grows out of our organized pattern of interactions over time. Like you might be predisposed to be more positive or to be organized. But then it's the interactions of the family that force that positive person into the role of cheerleader, or that organized person into the role of leader. All of our interactions are influenced by our previous interactions, and then they also influence our future interactions. So they're actually an outcome of how the family system is organized. Like, you can't have two parents who are clowns. That's a circus. Someone needs to be the responsible parent. So, one family's member's behavior is the response to other family members' behaviors, right? So, if one parent is the clown, then the other one has to be the serious one. Or maybe you wouldn't have needed to be the peacemaker if there hadn't been so much conflict in your family. So everyone develops communication behaviors that are associated with their position in the family. Yes, someone might be the cheerleader or the leader, or they might be the planner, the disciplinarian, the teacher, the mediator, the clown, or all other types of roles. And our roles are the way of knowing things like, what am I responsible for in this family? What should I say? What should I do as a mother or a father or a daughter or a husband in this family? What is expected of me in this family system? Like, how am I supposed to behave? Now, in our families, there are a couple of different issues that come up due to the roles that we play in our families, and we should pay special attention to them right now at this time of reflection. First, like we said in part one, the only constant is change, right? And as our families evolve and grow, so are our roles. Maybe the need for a role that you played is becoming obsolete as your kids get older. Like, are you still the coach if there's no one left to coach? Or as the kids get older and get along better, maybe you don't need to be the peacemaker anymore. Those kind of things. Or maybe you just see that the roles are changing. Like, if we go back to coach, my husband has coached the kids in sports since the very first U4 soccer team, which would have been what, like 14 years ago? The coach role for us, because they're all still playing sports and all still training, it isn't obsolete yet. But now, as some of the quote unquote coaching is more, especially for my oldest, moving away from sports, like moving away from soccer or lacrosse or kicking or tackling or whatever. And for him, it's moving into coaching him how to apply for colleges, how to understand how colleges work. Okay. That kind of thing is obviously more my area. And so our definition of the role of coach for him and who plays that role and to what degree is also changing. I'm the planner. I always have been. I'm the planner. I'm the leader, both of my family now and of my family of origin. Okay. So I plan the trips and the birthdays and the holidays. It's just my role. And I always say, and I'm not really necessarily joking, but I'm fairly certain that they'd never do anything if I didn't plan it. But I can already see that two of my kids have the potential that they might step up to that role someday. I can see definite planning potential. And while I'm not 100% sure of who just yet, it's enough that I do have hope that someday I will be able to just show up and have fun like my whole group always does. I mean, I have led 10 people around Disney for a week. I have led 7 people around Vegas in August in like 10,000-degree heat. I have led 11 people around Ireland. Okay. We don't live in Ireland. So another country. And then not to mention leading these 5 that I have all the time, like everywhere. And I know that someday I will be rewarded by just showing up and having fun. I am sure of it. Okay, well, the other issue that comes up with roles is the conflict between our roles. So, like, how do you handle the different expectations of having several roles and the role relationships that you have at the same time? Because sometimes our roles as wife and mother or mother and daughter, or friend and wife, or mother and employee, or podcaster and professor, or even within your role, say as mother, as the nurturer and the disciplinarian, or any two roles that you play in your life or in your family. Sometimes those roles can conflict, and sometimes the expectations in those roles can conflict. Maybe it's just at a particular point in time. Maybe work happens to be super busy, and so it's dominating the balance that you usually have between work and home. Or maybe your children tend to be super busy, and so it's just dominating the balance that you typically have between home and work. Okay. Or maybe as your teens are getting older, you've needed to be better at balancing your role relationship with them, moving to be more egalitarian, or at least moving for more of close to a horizontal relationship with them than the vertical relationship that you had with them when they were younger, right? Because when they're little, you have a vertical relationship. You are clearly the one in charge. You are clearly above them, right? But as they're getting older, now you've had to balance that a little bit more because now you're moving towards more of an equal, horizontal relationship with them. And you might have different vertical, horizontal relationship type things with different children. And sometimes you have to manage a different balance in those relationships. Or maybe you have a teen who's going through a tough time. So you need to show them some more grace than you normally do. So your role between nurturing and disciplinarian has had to soften a bit. Our roles and the relationships among our many roles are constantly changing. So let's use this time of balance, the equinox. Let's use it to look at the balance in our own lives. Today, I'd like you to think about this. In what areas of your life do you feel really well balanced? Like, where are you just nailing it? And where are you not? Where do you feel out of balance? Why do you think that is? It's okay to feel out of balance. I mean, look at the earth. Even it only gets its shit together twice a year, right? It's only balanced 2 out of 365 damn days. So even we're doing better than that. So feel good about that. You have your shit together better than the universe. Look at that. But regardless, as you move into this new season, how can you try? What can you do to bring this area or bring these roles back into balance? What can we let go of both individually and in our families? And we're also going to talk about some things that I think many of us and many of our families can let go of by expanding our conversation to include a bit about imposter syndrome and communication patterns. Now, because this is an audio format and not video, and I know I should do video too, and I will at some point, I promise, but I just know me, and I know that if I have a camera on me, things totally change. I don't know why, but I am very video averse. I had to make an intro video for work the other day, and oh my God, you'd swear I was being tortured. I was the last one of all of us to finally give in and make the video, and I was super stressed about it. And anyway, I don't know why, but we're audio, not video. So I have to tell you that I am super lucky to have a beautiful yard to look at full of trees, from palm trees to pine trees. I have magnolia trees and crepe myrtles, and then others that, well, I only know that they're trees. I mean, I'm not an arborist. That's all I've got. But looking out my office window, I see the crepe myrtles that are luscious and beautiful, the gorgeous greens with the pink and the white flowers. And it's amazing to me, though, those trees, how they grow, because every year I have the same debate with my husband. Comes like late fall, I guess. Do you absolutely need to cut them back? Because they're so ugly when he cuts them back. And I'm always convinced that they will never grow back and be beautiful again. And the same thing with all of my hydrangeas. Yes, the flowers are all dead, but do you have to cut the branches back all stubby like that? Because they just look so sad and pathetic. But then they do grow back, and they grow back bigger and better. They're more lush every year. And so, as much as it pains me to admit it, I know that to keep coming back bigger and better and more beautiful each year, yes, they do need to be cut back. I just really hate it. And then I look at all of the trees. In the South, we're a bit behind y'all up north, and I know that your leaves are turning beautiful already, and ours will be soon. Today, though, they're still green. But pretty soon, all of those leaves will start to turn colors, and they'll somehow become even more beautiful than they are right now. And then they'll start to fall off. And just like the ones that we actually cut back, the trees will all look so bare and icky and sad. But that's the process that they need to go through. It's necessary to let go of these leaves or flowers or branches in order for the new life to grow in the spring, so that they can come back bigger and better and more beautiful than they even are now. And just like the trees need to shed their leaves as the seasons turn, it's true for us too. For our souls and our lives and our relationships and our families to grow, it's our old patterns and our behaviors that we need to shed. We need to let go of what no longer serves us. So first, let's simply look inward. Simple, right? Well, simple, but definitely not easy. Last week, we talked a lot about building good habits. I guess here we could start with breaking some old ones. What habits and behaviors do you need to let go of? In order for you to continue to grow new life, what do you need to let go of? Are there thoughts or narratives in your head that are holding you back? To be completely honest, I have definitely had some new narratives in my head. And I guess feeling like it isn't new, but since back to school this year, I've found it to somehow be extra loud in my head. Imposter syndrome. Have you dealt with this? I do think a lot of us have in various aspects of our lives. But for some reason, I've really been feeling it professionally lately. I've been thinking about it because, at first, I just thought it was more of I need to get back into the groove of things after summer break kind of thing. But I will tell you, Stella is struggling to get her groove back here. I find myself doubting myself in the classroom. Well, I mean, the virtual classroom, that is. But I've been doubting myself. This is my 24th year teaching. That's a long time. In fact, oh my God, I just realized, okay, so most students, I guess, are 23-ish when they graduate. So that means that they weren't even born yet when I started teaching. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I'm going to need a minute to process that. So the typical senior in college was not even born when I started teaching. Wow. I mean, I guess, yes, that tracks 100%. And no, I shouldn't be surprised by this information at all. But wow, I don't know why it's so shocking when I think of it that way. Anyway, how did I get here? Yes, 24th year. It is my 24th damn year doing this. I know what I'm doing. I haven't just been stagnant all of these years either. I'm always growing and evolving in my career. So why do I feel so much doubt right now? Why do I feel so out of place? Why do I find myself questioning if I'm doing things okay? Are they thinking that I'm the worst professor in the program? Do they think, "Ugh, she doesn't even have a clue what she's doing here"? Why do I find myself questioning if I'm doing a good job? Do they like me? Do they think my class is beneficial? And a bazillion other similar questions. But the questions, they don't track. It doesn't even make sense why I'd ask any of these questions. Of course, I know I'm qualified. I know that I'm good at my job. I know that my classes are good and that they're beneficial, and I have not seen or heard anything to tell me otherwise on any of these points. And yet, for some reason, the questions are still there. The doubt is still there. And I would love to say it's better for me on the podcasting side of my career. But the questions and the narratives are there just as much. And to be honest, they're probably even more so. I see my numbers, the metrics, they're going up. I have friends reach out to me and thank me. They tell me how helpful our conversations are to them. So I know that y'all like it. And I know that y'all enjoy listening. But I still doubt. I still question. Am I good enough? Am I liked enough? Am I knowledgeable enough? Am I entertaining enough? Am I enough? So for me, right now in time, as I reflect, I'd say it's imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome is when you just can't shake those persistent feelings of self-doubt or inadequacy in some area of life. Often, but not always, of course, but often it is professionally speaking. But many of you have also experienced it in your relationships, which is totally normal too. As a mother, in your social circle, in your friendships, really anywhere. You question if you belong. You have a fear of being exposed as a fraud. I mean, just like I rationally explain to myself often, but you may have these doubts 100% despite evidence of your competence, of your accomplishments. You look around the table, whether it's in a board meeting or at a dinner party table, and you think, I don't belong here. I don't deserve to be here. What if they all can see that? Or it's only a matter of time before they realize that I'm a fraud. Obviously, this is all completely false. It is untrue. We are qualified. We are capable. We do belong, and we are absolutely not a fraud. So why? Why do we feel like we are? What causes imposter syndrome? Well, the biggest cause? Perfectionism. Yep. Those crazy perfectionists, right? Those crazy perfectionist people out there who set those excessively high standards for themselves. Well, they often experience imposter syndrome. Apparently, we believe, yes, we believe that any mistake we make or any failure that we have just proves our incompetence. And so we feel like a fraud. Yep, I feel that one in my soul. But for other people, it's their early experiences of being criticized or constantly being compared to others that can contribute to their imposter syndrome. And some people attribute their successes to external factors like to luck or just good timing instead of acknowledging their own skills and abilities that got them there. So, those of us with imposter syndrome, we have self doubt. We constantly question our abilities and we fear being exposed as a fraud. Sometimes, even this self doubt can hinder our performance and our personal growth. We feel anxiety and stress because that fear of failure and fear of being discovered as an imposter, well, surprise, it can lead to heightened anxiety and to chronic stress. Shocking, I know. And we all realize that this can totally negatively impact our mental well being and our overall quality of life. And when these frauds, these imposters, often when they do succeed, they undersell their own successes because their self doubt prevents them from fully embracing and fully celebrating their achievements. They may even downplay their successes and even attribute them to luck or to external factors rather than just acknowledging that it was because of their own capabilities. So for me, right now, at this time, as I move into fall and reflect on what leaves I need to shed in order to grow, I need to let go of my feelings of imposter syndrome. And maybe you do too. And if so, we can do it together. First, we need to recognize that these feelings are totally normal. They do absolutely not reflect our true abilities. Second, we need to replace the self critical thoughts that we have with positive affirmations. Affirmations that reflect on our past accomplishments and our own strengths, whether it's through personal reflection or through talking with others, we can hopefully start to have a more realistic view of our abilities because we are totally capable and totally qualified. Third, we need to take things down a notch. Avoid setting those excessively high standards for ourselves. We know we do it, right? And fourth, like everything else, we just need to grant ourselves some grace, treat ourselves with kindness and compassion. So, as you look at yourself, what do you need to shed about yourself in order for your soul to grow? Now, how about your family? In part two, we talked about our roles. We said that our roles are influenced by our characteristics. But then our roles are reinforced by our family's interactions. Every interaction is influenced by the previous interactions and then influences our future interactions. Over time, sometimes our families develop problematic communication patterns that can do things like keep us from understanding each other and ultimately can lead to conflict. So, can you look at your family and see any communication patterns that you could shed that would allow your relationships to grow? Really, there are a lot of them out there to choose from. 7 to be specific. So, chances are most of us could probably shed at least one, if not more, probably. The most common communication pattern that families can suffer with, surprise, we've already covered it: poor listening. Remember, we talked about how to be a better listener in the It's Not About the Socks episode? A huge issue is the lack of active listening within families. People may interrupt or ignore or fail to empathize with each other's perspectives. And this pattern, it prevents meaningful dialogue and understanding. Now, if we want to shed this pattern, we need to practice active listening. We need to give each other our undivided attention and to validate each other's feelings and our experiences. A second pattern that we can face is being overly critical and overly defensive. And this can create a hostile environment within families. If you're constantly belittling each other or attacking each other's ideas or actions, it can affect trust and our open communication. Now, if we'd like to shed this pattern, we need to create a culture of constructive feedback rather than criticism. Remember that? The difference between feedback and criticism? We talked about that one in the socks episode too. A third pattern that we often face in relationships is stonewalling and withdrawal. The stonewalling happens when someone emotionally shuts down and withdraws from the family's communication. This then leads to unresolved conflicts and to emotional distance. If we hope to shed this pattern, we need to work on creating a safe space where everyone feels comfortable expressing their thoughts and their emotions. A fourth pattern. See what I mean about there being enough of these patterns to go around, right? Something for everyone. Anyway, fourth is overgeneralization and blaming. Sometimes families make overgeneralizing statements and blame each other, which then can escalate our conflicts and it will create an overall negative atmosphere. Now, to shed this pattern, we need to focus on specific incidents rather than just making sweeping, overarching generalizations like you always, right? That's a generalization. No, talk about the specific incident. And if we can each take responsibility for our own actions and use more of a collaborative problem solving approach, we can instead help to shift the blame towards finding solutions instead, right? Much better. A fifth pattern in some families is when they struggle with openly expressing their emotions, which, as you can probably puzzle together, only leads to misunderstandings and to pent up frustrations. To shed this pattern would involve encouraging emotional vulnerability and creating a much more supportive environment. We would need to become comfortable expressing our emotions, which in and of itself can be super challenging for some people, right? And showing empathy towards each other, which we have talked about so much in other episodes. But this will help to validate each other's feelings and to foster the healthy emotional communication that we all want. Yet a sixth communication pattern comes when families fail to establish and respect healthy boundaries. It may include intrusion into each other's personal space, or an over involvement in each other's lives, or just a general lack of privacy. To shed this pattern, we need to respectfully communicate our boundaries and to set clear expectations of what the boundaries are. And then respecting these boundaries, which of course is the hard part, right? And yet a seventh, but at least final, seventh pattern that we face is interesting because on the surface, it seems good. But in actuality, it can be problematic. Avoiding conflicts in our families seems good in the short term, but long term, it can cause resentment and unresolved issues. To shed this pattern, we need to reframe our conflicts to be instead opportunities for growth. So, just like I promised you, I have given something for everyone. You get a problematic communication pattern, and you get a problematic communication pattern. You all get problematic communication patterns. So, as you are reflecting on what your family can shed at this point of seasonal transition, if you cannot come up with anything else, although if your family is anything like mine, you probably can easily name, like one or two. But if you can't come up with anything else, I'm sure that you can probably spot yourself in one of these patterns at least. So today, as we move into this beautiful fall season, on this autumnal equinox, I'd like you to prepare to let go. We all want to grow as individuals and to grow in our families. But just like everything else in nature, in order for any of us to grow and to bloom, we first need to let go of our old leaves. Can you shed the old behaviors and patterns that no longer serve you? And then we can give ourselves and our families the space to flourish. Now, as an aside, I know that I have a lot of friends in Australia and in that beautiful Southern Hemisphere, which I'm assuming is beautiful because it sure looks beautiful. And I've never been there, but I'd really like to go. But those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, happy spring, right? You guys get to be on the other side of this. And you can certainly use our autumnal equinox, as a time for your change and your growth. But don't forget, I do have an episode, the spring equinox, which you might find beneficial too. Of course, we would find it beneficial. All my episodes, I love to think, are beneficial to all of us, but I will also repost that episode for those in the Southern Hemisphere specifically. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already listened, though, to parts 1 and 2, please do go back and use it as an opportunity for this transitional point in nature for us to reflect. If you enjoy the show, if you've taken something helpful from this episode or from another, please take a quick minute and share it on socials or with your friends who you might also think would enjoy it. And if you don't already, please do follow the show so that you don't miss out on any new content. Follow me or reach out to me on socials, on Instagram and TikTok at Reframing Me. And on Facebook, it's Reframing Me, and join the Facebook group, Reframing Me, the podcast community, to connect with other women who are also raising teens and rediscovering themselves. Until next time, be well, communicate, and give yourself the space to grow.